Hey everyone, Random Randy here, and in today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to make what I call the easiest fingerless mitts ever. They are really super simple. They don't involve any sewing aside from weaving in your ends, which is fantastic because if you're like me, you don't want to have to stop what you're doing to whip stitch everything together. I'm going to be showing you an adult medium size, which will fit most women and some men, but I will also be leaving a link to a chart which will give you average hand sizes so you can figure out what size you want to make them. These ones that I have on right now are actually a medium large. They're a little bit bigger around than I would like. So these would more fit a man's hands than mine, and I have fairly large hands for a woman. So to get started, all you will need is yarn. In this case, I'm going to be using this Rainbow Bright, which is from the Loops and Threads brand. It is actually an impeccable yarn. It is a medium worsted weight yarn. So any worsted weight yarn will do. Also going to be using a 5.5 millimeter hook. I don't want them to be super tight since it is summertime. These are meant to be more of an airy, open, comfortable mitt for nights if you're out at the campfire or whatever. So 5.5 will work. If you're wanting to make a tighter fabric, you may want to go down to a 5 millimeter or an H hook. You're also going to need scissors, tapestry needle for weaving in your ends, and a stitch marker for towards the end to mark where your thumb hole is going to be. This is going to be super easy. All you're going to need to know is how to chain and how to make a half double crochet stitch and a slip stitch later on. So to get started, I'm going to make a slip knot. These are seriously, no joke, the easiest arm warmers, wristers, fingerless mitts, whatever you want to call it, you will ever make. So get your slip knot on your hook and let's get started. To make them long enough, I'm going to chain 30 and see where we're at for length. 1. So go ahead and chain 30. If you don't know how to chain, I do have a Crochet Crash Course 101 video, which will teach you all of the basic stitches you need to know to get started. So that is 30 chain stitches, and that is approximately 9 inches for me, and that will be just fine because you want to have an even number of stitches because you're going to actually be subtracting 2 from your total length to start with, so this will be just under 9 inches long. Now we are going to half double crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook. Half double crochet, if you don't know, you yarn over, go into your stitch, yarn over again, pull up a loop so you have 3 on the hook, yarn over, and then you're going to pull through all 3 stitches that are there. Show you slow one more time, yarn over, through the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through all 3 loops on the hook. And that is how you do a half double crochet stitch. We're going to do that all the way to the end of the row. So go ahead and do that and pause the video here if you need to for a minute, and I will meet you back up at the end of this row. So now that you have completed the first row, if you want, just to make sure that it hasn't shrunk too much from subtracting the 2 stitches at the end, you can hold your hand out over it about where you would want it to sit. And that is still going to be a few inches down my wrist, so that is still perfect. Now to do the next row, we're going to chain 2 and turn. Now the whole rest of the pattern for the body of the mitt is going to be done through the back loop of the stitch only. The back loop, if I can get this close enough for you to see, here when you're looking at the stitch, there are 2 parts to this V on top of a crochet stitch. You're going to be going only in the back portion of it. You're not going to be using this front part. Normally you'd go through both. We're only going to be going through the back loop. That is going to give us the ribbed look that we're looking for. So now that you've chained 2 and turned, we're going to be doing this entire row is still half double crochet, going to be doing it through the back loop only. So yarn over, go under just that back bar of the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. Yarn over, go through the back loop only, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through all 3. And if you look right here, you might not be able to see it quite a bit yet, but it will show up more as you go on. Going to continue the entire row in the same way, just go through the back loop of all of the stitches with a half double crochet and meet me back up at the end when you are finished. So now we have reached the end of row 2, and at this point you may want to take a measuring tape and see how tall your rows are. So for 2 half double crochet rows, I'm looking at a measurement of 1 inch. So that's about half an inch per row, and I want these to be 7.5 inches around. That means I'm going to need to do 15 rows if I want it to be kind of loose, 14 if I want it to be snug fitting. A good rule of thumb to determine the way you want it to fit is, since acrylic yarn in particular is quite stretchy, you want to subtract half an inch from the measurement around the widest part of your hand. The average size for most women's hands is about 7.5 inches. So, best way to reach that would be for a loose fitting glove, 15, which will be the exact measurement and it'll have a little bit of stretch. To have a more snug glove that's not going to slip down off of your fingers, 14 rows is going to be best, and that'll give us about 7-inch circumference. So, moving on to the next row, you're just going to be repeating row 2 until you have the number of rows that you need. So chain 2, turn it over, and we're going to be going through the back loop of every stitch all the way across. You're just going to keep repeating that until you have 14 rows, 15 rows, however many you need, depending upon the size of glove that you want. And go ahead and finish that up. And I will meet you once it is done, and I will show you how to join this very long rectangle into a glove and make the thumb hole. I am just about done with row 14, which will be the last row for me of this mitten, so I thought I would show you the last few stitches so that we can hop right into how to join this together to make it into a glove. So you're gonna have a shape that kind of resembles a square right now. I don't know if I can get it all in. Yeah, right there. So what you want to do is you want to figure out where you want your thumb hole to be placed. First, you're going to want to figure out which side is going to be the outside of your mitt. Personally, I like to look for the first row and make sure that's going to be facing out. You're going to want to fold your glove in half with the right sides or the outside of the glove together. So this first row that we did is going to be facing inward for the join. Now you can pin it if you're the super fussy sort. I don't really bother because it's not a big enough piece for me to need it, but if you feel better that way, feel free. Now for me, pretty much you just have to figure out where you're going to put the glove. I like to have the top edge come to about my first knuckle. So I'm going to count down from here how many stitches it'll be at, where it'll be the length I want it to be. And that will be, let's see if I can get it close enough so you'll actually be able to see. There we go. That is going to be from here to here. So I'm just going to put my stitch marker through here. That way I know where to stop. You're going to want to mark where you want the top of your thumb hole to be. And for me, that's right here, which is 10 stitches down. You know what, I'm going to take that up a little bit and we're going to put it at 8 instead. There we go. Yeah, that'll be better. Because I like to have my gloves go farther down my wrist and not quite so high up on my fingers. But that's all a matter of personal preference. Either way, you're going to be making the thumb hole in the same way. So this is going to seem weird at first because your yarn is going to be on the opposite side of where you're holding on to. So I like to chain one just so it doesn't tuck the edge in, and then you're going to go through. It will be the remaining loop from your first row. When you made your first row, you generally go through one part of your chain stitch, and now we're going to be going through the other part of it. So chain one, going to go through the remaining loop from your first row, and if I can see it, there we go. And you're going to be going through, of course this has to be a blue stitch, you're going to be going through the front loop only of this stitch here on the other side. Then you're going to slip stitch, so just yarn over and pull it through everything on your hook. You're going to keep going that way all the way until you get down to your marker. So we're going to go through the loop that's left from that first row, and then we're going to go through just the front loop of the row on the other side of the glove. Go through this one, through there, slip stitch it together. You can whip stitch the glove if you are more comfortable doing it that way. I feel that doing a slip stitch gives you a much more secure join, much less likely to have things unravel, which is not what anybody wants to have happen. And as you go, you want to make sure that you're not skipping any stitches. You want to make sure you're just matching up your number as you go. This will be the last one for me. Now what you're going to do First, I'm going to pull this so that I don't have to worry about it unraveling while I'm showing you here. You're going to match it up with where it'll be sitting on your hand. And then you're going to mark out where the bottom of your thumb hole is going to be. For me, that's usually about 6 stitches. So I'm just going to turn it here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to actually mark it at the 6th. Average thumb hole size is usually about 1.5 inches for an adult, and that'll be just the right size for my giant thumb. So what we're going to do now, so you don't have to cut your yarn and weave in an end here, tighten the loop back down on the hook. We're just going to slip stitch through the remaining loop on your first row here until you get down to your marker. Not going to go through both parts because that would seam it completely shut. And of course, me pulling on it tugged it loose, but that's okay. Stay, there we go. So we're just going to slip stitch through these ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, before you go finish seaming it up, it's a good idea to try it on if the glove is for you. If it's for somebody else, well, you can always just hope for the best, I suppose. But that is going to be about perfect for me. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take that down one more because that's going to be a little bit too tight for my giant thumb. So I'm actually going to take this down one more row. Just one. So do one more slip stitch through this first row only, and that will make it just the right size. And now we're going to resume just like in the top part. I'm going to be slip stitching through that remaining part of the loop from the first row and going through the front loop of the row on the other side of the glove. Just going to slip stitch down the whole thing to the end. And that is the last one. So now I'm going to grab my scissors and snip off a tail that's 4 to 6 inches long just for weaving in. If you're one of those people who just likes to knot your yarn, you don't have to cut off quite so much. But I like to make sure my ends are woven in really, really well. I like to take both of these strings because we have our starting strand and our ending strand. I like to just slip stitch and pull them through everything so it's nice and secure. And then you can weave them in. Turn your glove right side out. Put it on. And you're all set. Now all you need to do is make a second one and you have yourself a pair of fingerless mitts. Like I said, they're super, super easy, and there are actually a bunch of different variations that you can do. The pair that I showed you in the beginning of the video, just to show you a side-by-side comparison. As you can see, this is much more of a medium size, the one that we just made. This was done with half double crochet. It was also done with an eye hook, as was this, but this one is done with double crochet stitches. So obviously you wouldn't need as many rows and you could make it longer much more quickly. So this is more of a large adult size. This is more of a medium adult size. The thumb holes are in pretty much the same location on me. Yep, in the same spot here. And as you can see from doing the slip stitch along that edge, when you're using a variegated yarn, you actually get a cool little separate colored detail band there. But that is all you have to do to make a pair of super easy fingerless mitts. If you liked this tutorial, don't forget to drop the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you would like to see more awesome fibery goodness like this. And I hope that you enjoy making your mitts. Another variation that you can do that I forgot to mention, but I do not have a sample on hand to show you, is you could do the entire thing with single crochets if you wanted a really, really tight, very warm fabric. I think single crochets are very tedious unless I'm making amigurumi, so I just don't bother with them. The size could also be adapted to a children's size. All you really need is the circumference measurement around the widest part of their hand and how long you want it to be, and you could make them even for babies if you were of such a mind to. So thank you so much everybody for watching this tutorial. I hope that you found it helpful and clear, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more fibery content like this, and I will catch you all in the next video. Bye!